the Isle of Skye is genuinely an amazing place to dive. There's loads of fish, the water is generally absolutely crystal clear, and there's just a huge amount of variety. It's brilliant diving.
So I've come out here to the Isle of Skye for a bit of spearfishing. Now this is a venue that in the past I found pretty tough, and I really struggled here last year. I wasn't diving deep enough, my breath hold wasn't long enough, and I really struggled with the cold. So hopefully this year I've switched a few things up and I'm able to get a few more fish. It's going to be great to get out with some divers that are much better than me and hopefully learn a lot off them, but we'll see how it goes.
For our first dive of the trip, we headed out to some really remote islands well off the northern tip of Skye. Now, Aaron, who runs the Skye Spearfishing YouTube channel, very kindly took us out. If you're interested in spearfishing off Skye, definitely recommend having a look at his channel. He knows the island really well, and we got some really helpful tips off him. Now, the viz was fantastic, probably about 12 metres, and I'm certainly not used to this sort of viz, living in North Wales, and it was quite difficult to size up some of the fish. This pollock here is probably about £3. It's not a particularly big fish, but it's definitely shootable. But at the time, I thought this was sort of like a hand-sized fish, and it's probably well out of range anyway. I quickly realised that to get anything to come close enough, I had to make use of the available cover. So I tried to bury myself really deeply in the kelp. Now, as always off Skye, there are a lot of coalfish about. Now, these look really small, but these are all probably between 40 and 45 centimetres long. Now, coalfish obviously don't get that big, and you get a bit more meat off a coalfish than a pollock, so these are probably shootable fish, particularly that one over to the left that you can see there. It's really cool just watching them mill around in clear water like this. Now, I did quite a lot of dives in this area, generally not seeing that many fish, and I really tried to make use of the cover. This is a dive here to about 12 metres, and it's quite cool just seeing how much kelp there is at that depth. In the area I live, there's none. This occasion a pollock came in pretty quickly. Now, I wasn't really sure how big this fish was. I knew it was above the minimum size, so I pulled the trigger, and I didn't realise that it was actually a fairly decent fish until it managed to bury itself in the kelp and actually proved quite hard to drag up. Now, this fish was about 55 centimetres, far bigger than I expected. And on the next dive down, I hit a slightly deeper area. I think this dive was somewhere between 15 and 16 metres, and even down there was still very thick kelp growth. Fantastic to see. And I hit the bottom and immediately saw a wall of coalfish with a pollock leading them. I was pretty happy with this shot, just stoning it at quite long range. And again, this pollock was far bigger than I was expecting. It looked shootable and edible, but I actually got it in. It's by no means a large fish, but again, it's about 55 centimetres, so not a bad fish, and an absolutely beautiful golden colour. Really liked that fish. Now, there were quite a few seals that were possibly getting a bit aggressive, and this is probably why. You can see a pup here on the rocks. Didn't want to approach any closer than this, so I quickly got back in the water and we headed to a slightly different part of the mark. Now, even at depth, the seals were coming pretty close. I breathed up, went down to about 15 metres, thought I'd put in a really good dive, and instantly the seal came through, scaring off any fish. So we moved again. And this clip here, you can see the algae bloom on Skye, and even in this algae bloom, the viz is still fairly decent. Probably had somewhere between 5 and 7 metres viz, and again, lots of coalies. Now, one tip that Aaron gave us actually is to go down, and if you don't see any fish within 50 seconds into your dive, just to come straight back up. He said if you do see fish, it's worth hanging around and waiting if anything bigger turned up. On this occasion, nothing did, so I decided to have a shot at one of the coalfish, but I missed it. Now on this occasion, a decent pollock came in straight away, So I took the shot and picked up another decent fish. Now on this dive you can kind of see me putting into practice this tip of Aaron. You can see a small pollock turns up straight away, so I decide to sit tight and see if anything better arrives. Now what you can't see in this clip is, it just doesn't show up in the GoPro, but there were several quite large pollock hanging around in the background. Some pollock probably about the 65cm mark. You just can't see them in the bloom. Now eventually a few kind of okay pollock turn up, and I'm just running out of breath at this point. So I just take the shot on one. There's about a 50cm fish. It would have been nice to get one of the bigger ones, but my breath hold was just not quite there. So I'd maybe had 30 more seconds in me. I could have given it a bit more time. So I finished the day with 4 okay fish, nothing massive. It was a lovely sunset, and it was actually a really enjoyable day's diving. I certainly learned a lot diving with somebody who knows the island really well. Now, we beer battered the pollock and they were absolutely delicious. It's a method of cooking I've not used before. Normally I breadcrumb my pollock or maybe make them into a fish pie or even just bake them. But beer battering was really simple, really easy, and they were absolutely delicious. It just kept the meat so succulent, and it was really nice having the batter as well. It was a fantastic way of cooking them and one I thoroughly recommend. After a day of diving quite deep, we headed to a village called Plockton, and this is somewhere that looked great on the charts. We thought we'd be full of scallops, but I would recommend never diving there because it's absolutely terrible. It is pretty barren and it's probably been smashed by commercial divers. Now, Oliver did get a really good crab. This is quite a nice one. He did well to see that actually. I didn't even spot it. And I also picked up a crab, not quite as big as his, but you know, it's still nice to get a brown crab. Don't see too many of those where I live. And we managed to get a few scallops. There really weren't very many there. It was pretty tough going, but it was nice to pick up something. And there were some inquisitive seals as well. This one came very close and even had a little nibble on my fins, which was quite cool to see. Now the real bonus of diving in Scotland is you've usually got some scallops if you blank, and these were great. We fried some chorizo and just cooked the scallops without some pepper and some spices, and it was really good. Nice meal and quite a relaxing dive actually. Now for our final shore dive we headed to a mark towards the north of the island. It was a bit of a walk in, which I obviously don't mind, and it's a really beautiful place to dive. And as usual on Skye, the water was gin clear. Now my GoPro had fogged up on this dive, so I've not put many of the clips in. There are a lot of coalfish about, and you know, I actually had a shot at this, sort of fairly decent one, about 45cm, but I put in a poor shot, nicked it through the back, and unfortunately lost the fish. Now, shortly after that, I saw what would definitely have been a PB pollock for me, and made a bit of a mistake here. I broke cover trying to get closer to the fish. I should have just let it swim to me. Now I tried to get in range as it went behind that kelp, put in a shot, probably not a good enough shot, and I lost the fish. Bit of a long shot anyway, so I should have waited. But it was really nice just seeing these massive shoals of coalfish. There were thousands of them about, and I kept on just waiting and waiting, hoping a big pollock would kind of cruise in. Now myself and Oliver, we got out, but Toby, the other diver, he stayed in for another 2 hours and explored a different part of the mark which we didn't even look at, and we guessed he was getting fish because he kept on swimming back to his float. When Toby got out, you could see staying in that extra 2 hours had really paid dividends. He had 5 pollock, all over 60cm, you know, cracking haul. Some pretty good fish there, all between 4 and 5 pounds. and it was quite inspiring actually just to see him do something differently and get a good haul of fish. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed that video. If you did enjoy it, please do like and subscribe. It helps me out and helps the channel grow. Now, there was another really good dive which I didn't put in this video, and the reason for that is Aaron lent me his memory cards. Now his GoPro records in much higher quality than mine, and my laptop is too old to process his footage. So we did a really cool boat dive out of Loch Bracadale, saw some big spur dogs, everyone shot some good pollock, so that will be coming up in the next video. Got some quite cool footage from that, so hopefully I'll see you then. Until then, enjoy your spearfishing.